again, our presenter, Dr. Prashant Suthakal, who's, this is just a very brief description of his many accomplishments, but he's a data analytics and AI consultant, author, and professor. He's the founder and managing principal of DBP Institute, a data and analytics consulting, education, and research firm. He's the author of 2 books, Data for Business Performance, and secondly, Analytics Best Practices, which was rated #1 analytics book of all time in May by Book Authority. He writes regularly on data analytics and AI for Forbes and CFO University. Edward Roski, again, who's probably not going to be with us today, or maybe late, is Chief Performance Officer at Organo, a strategic partner building digital foundations that enable companies to harness the power of technology, people, and processes. He's passionate about learning educations, co-authored over 15 books on EPM and BI, made over 50 YouTube videos, sponsored over 100 webcasts, and extensively traveled. So we have some great, a great presenter, perhaps more than one, we'll see. So without further ado, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Prashant. Well, I just want to mention that we will hopefully have time at the end for some Q&A. So if you have any questions that come along, please feel free to put them in the chat box. Without further ado, Prashant, please take it away.
Okay, thanks, Rafe. I'm going to share my slide deck because a couple of images didn't come up in the original slide deck. So Rafe, are you able to see my slides?
Yes, yeah, okay. We can.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are from. Thank you very much for joining this session from PACE, where I'm going to talk about moving from decisions to data. Unlike most data analytics projects, which talk about going from data to decisions, I'll give the justification why this would also be a good option to look at. I'm not disputing that data to decisions is bad, but also look at the second option, which is moving from decisions to data, so that we improve the chances of getting good results from data and analytics. I have a small request to all of you. Can you please mute your microphone so that there is little disturbance from the background? Unless you have a questions, you can unmute it and ask. Okay. So there's so if you look at the definition of data analytics, there are varied definitions of data analytics. If you talk to people from oil and gas, for example, they are mostly concerned about regulations, and their definition of data analytics is more towards data capture. But on the other hand, if you talk to people in retail and CPG, their definition of data analytics is more towards deriving insights and making good decisions. Nothing wrong with that, but it all depends on how the industry dynamics plays a role here. If you talk to people in CFO community, their definition of data analytics is more towards reporting so that we meet the IFRS and GAAP requirements. Whereas if you talk to people from supply chain, their definition of analytics is more towards how we can provide better service to our customers. When I talk supply chain, it includes marketing as well. But if you talk to people from IT, especially the product companies, their definition of analytics is primarily based on the product and services they are selling. So if you talk to people in SaaS, where Gary Calkins worked for a long time, so their definition of analytics is more towards data science and ML and all those things. Whereas if you talk to people from SAP, where I worked for a very long time, their definition of analytics is pretty much the products and services they're selling, right, from ERP to GRC to CRM, BW, PO, name it, and SAP has a product there. So overall, there is a lot of definitions of data analytics in the market, and it all depends on whom you're talking to, where they come from. So it's almost like 6 blind men looking at the elephant and describing the elephant in their own words. So somebody says it's a van, somebody says it's a wall, somebody says it's a fan, so on and so forth. So my question to all of you, what's your definition of data analytics? If somebody were to ask you, hey, well, what is this talk from PACE you are attending about data analytics? How would you, what would you tell them? What's your definition of data analytics? Type your answers in the chat box. I see. Okay, decision support. Very good, JP. Absolutely, because it aligns well with the well with our topic. What are the key words? What's a key definition of data analytics? Okay, good one, Larry. Answers, finding answers or insights, using data to create answers or insights. Asking better questions. Lovely, Gary. So it's all, so you see, there is quite a few definitions of data analytics which we have got. There's nothing wrong with that. All of them are correct. So encompassing all the definitions we have and looking at what people in the industry are talking about, my definition of data analytics is asking questions to gain insights or answers, which just Larry was talking about, using data to make decisions to measure and improve business performance. So you are making decisions so that you measure and improve the business performance. That's the whole objective of data analytics. I've been talking to a few of my clients and prospects, and they've been saying that, hey, what's the data culture? We want to build a data and analytics culture. So I tell them the culture of data analytics is all about measuring and improving performance. So if you don't believe in the concept of improving over a period of time, there is very little you can achieve with data analytics. So that's a fundamental thing of data analytics. We are making decisions so that we can measure and improve our business performance. So with this, so I have this kind of a chart, which I got it from one of the sites. I modified it to suit my presentation. So on the left side, we have this complete ignorance, where people have, they say ignorance is a bliss. Okay, they think this is how businesses work and so on and so forth. But in many places, they have some anecdotes, they have some beliefs and all those things, which is also okay, but often it might be true or it might not be true as well. And then you have reactive checks. Suddenly, so the CEO gets up in the morning and starts sending this mail, say, I want this report, I want that report. Then you start sending those information which is asked for. Then you have this ongoing report, so on and so forth. So I'll just talk about this first 4 boxes, which Gartner says that 87% of the companies are in the data analytics maturity of 1 and 2, which is all about storage, reactive checks, so on and so forth. Very few companies are on the right side. So that's where the most of the value is. But let's talk about the first few boxes. I have a small story here. So recently, a couple of months back, I did a project for a chemical distributor company in the US. And when we started this project, casually I asked them, hey, well, what's your price elasticity of demand? They said, don't worry, it's all inelastic. I was kind of surprised because they were actually selling additives to the food product, which is like sugar, sweetener, so on and so forth. I was kind of surprised. How can this be an inelastic product? So I said, let's see what the data is saying. So they had about 600 SKUs. So we took the data, and for the last 3 years, we took the top 5 SKUs, which were actually getting the revenues. In fact, surprisingly, the top 5 SKUs constituted almost like 18% of the revenues, which they didn't know it at all. So it was simple math, but we just tell them that the 5 SKUs constitute 18% of your revenue, which is good, but at the same time, it's extremely risky as well. But let's come back to this price elasticity of demand. So we looked at the numbers and we did the calculation, and it was extremely high. It was significantly higher than what? So you have been running businesses for the last 11 years, and you believe that the whole your demand for your products is inelastic in nature, but the data is saying completely opposite. That's where most of the companies are, which are on the left side. They think that this is how the companies have been run, which is based on storage, based on reactive checks and all those things. The future part of it, which is all the boxes on the right side, very few companies are doing that. Like, for example, customer segmentation, product profitability, all these FP&A reports, which the cool ones, which we are talking about, very few companies are doing this. So this is where I talk about the measurement continuum, going from the left side to the right side. It can't happen overnight. You might want to run like Usain Bolt, but it doesn't happen overnight. It has to be over a period of time, which requires proper planning, execution, so on and so forth. So when I talk about data analytics, there are 4 key building blocks, which is about data and algorithms, which everybody gets it. But at the same time, it's about assumptions and ethics. Many times we think that data analytics is like a black and white. It's like you put the data into an algorithm, which could be regression, and out comes all those numbers. But even within regression, there are so much of ambiguity, so much of subjectivity involved there, whether it's R-square value, whether it's a P value, whether it's a F value, so on and so forth. You have to make some assumptions to make sure that these numbers are kind of realistic. So assumptions are an integral part of data analytics. And next number, the 4th one is about ethics, being ethical in the way you are deriving insights. So I call it as a 4 legs of the stool when it comes to data analytics, which is as data, algorithms, assumptions, and ethics. Why data analytics? A lot of research has been done, MIT, McKinsey, all those people are talking about. But at the same time, many data analytics projects are actually failing. Gartner did a study and they said that 80% of the projects fail. McKinsey did a study and there's a lot of data quality issues, which is reported by Harvard Business Review, Experian, Gartner, and so on. Now we are in the ESG world, which enters environment, social, and governance. And we are also seeing that too much of data capture and processing results in a huge carbon footprint to the environment. So they're saying that the next few years, by 2030, one of the biggest polluters in the world is going to be the data centers. So just capturing and storing data doesn't make any company data driven. You need to have a plan to manage it and derive value out of it. So now coming back to the data analytics value chain. So it's all start with the left side, which is how most of the data analytics projects are working, because they typically have a association with the IT projects. So you start with identifying your objectives, what goals are. Then you look at the data, you prepare the data, build models, and so on and so forth. That takes almost like 70 to 80% of the effort, which is a lost business opportunity. The businesses don't really care about how much time you're spending in cleaning the data, sourcing the data, reformatting the data, identifying the missing values and populating it, and all those things. What they really want is insights and recommendation. What they want you to tell a story so that they can make better decisions and implement automation and efficiency so as to measure and improve performance. What businesses want is on the top side, but unfortunately, most of the effort, 70 to 80% of the effort is spent on the bottom side, which is all about data cleansing, preparation, building models, and so on and so forth. So my philosophy or my pitch here is that it's good that you start on the left side looking at the goals. How about looking from the right side as well, which is look at what decisions are at stake. To make those decisions, what insights you need or what answers you need, which Larry just mentioned, and to make derive those insights or answers, what data you need. So can we also go from the right side and reduce the cycle time in making sure that the decisions which are made using data analytics are kind of meaningful and useful. So again, so overall we have 3 purposes of data, which is operations, compliance, and decisions. What is this line in between, Prashant? Why have you put this line? Because typically, most of the time, the data is typically captured from an operations and compliance activity, and decision-making is a byproduct of these 2 activities. So let's look at the characteristics of data when it's captured for operations and compliance. It is defined and predictable. I know very well how, in what format I need the data. For example, I have to create a purchase order. So I'm going to create it in SAP, and the data model is defined, it's predictable, so on and so forth. The data is often in the native and proprietary format, which is all systems driven. And the focus is on getting things done, which is on business process. Whereas if you look at the data management for decisions, for decision making, it's all about hypothesis. It's about asking the right questions. Data might not be there all the time. It all depends on the nature of questions which you're asking. As we saw in the measurement continuum, if you are typically on the left side, you might get most of the data. But more and more you go up in the value chain, and the complexity of the questions increases. That means in that case, the data might not be always available. And in that case, you need the data in a structured format. For example, if you talk about linear regression, I need all the independent and the explanatory variables in a continuous numeric format. Whereas if you look at logistic regression, the data type might be categorical. So the overall, I need the data in the right structure so that the data science algorithms which are using the data can can derive those insights. And ultimately, the focus is on business insights. So let me give you a story. Let me give you an example about operations and compliance. So I was working for a fuel retailing company in North America, and so they had a few data analytics related projects. So the first question was, what was our revenue in 2021. Of course, you can get this information from your point of sale system, from your ERP system. Go to your ERP and you get this information. Okay, I got it. Now, my next question is there a relationship between prices and the quantity sold? Of course, you can get this information from your historical data. Good. Now, my next question, is there a relationship between sales and location? Oh my gosh, it is getting a little bit complicated with that. But again, let me see what data do I have? Of course, I have the location data because from all the sales which have happened, I captured the location information. Great question, but fortunately, I have the data for you. Of course, sales is dependent on location. For example, the province of Saskatchewan, Canada, has got less sales compared to British Columbia. Okay, that makes sense. Now, my next question, is the sales dependent on the weather? Oh my gosh, great question. But let me see whether my data can answer this. So I go to my data, but sadly or unfortunately, I don't have this information. Why? Because you typically don't capture the weather information as part of running your operations and compliance. So you had a great question, a great hypothesis, but unfortunately, you don't have this. So this is where the deeper the question you have, the better it's going to be for analytics. But sadly, the data might not be there. So my belief is that, or my hypothesis is that the analytics at some point in time, the data for analytics at some point in time will give up. Then that depends on the questions which you're asking. The deeper the question you're asking, there is a higher chance that you might not get the answer from your data. Because overall, the philosophy of making decisions using data analytics is completely a different ball game. And often you capture the data which is on the left two sides, which is on operations and compliance. Now with this, so can we do something? Can we start with the right side, which is decisions, and look at the answers or the insights which we need, and what data do we need to make those happen? So let's start first with decision. Now, my first question to you, how many decisions do you think an average adult makes in a day? Type your answers in the chat box. It could be small, big, conscious, unconscious, high impact, low impact, whatever it is. Complex, simple. How many decisions an average adult makes in one day? 6,000, 150, 500. Okay, I'm all getting in the hundreds range except one. So Princeton did a study and they said an average adult makes about 35,000 decisions a day. So you can Google it and find out the source of this information. But overall, we make lots and lots of decisions every day. Of course, not all of them are complex, but some are very simple. Should I drink water or should I drink Coke? But some of them might be even complex. Should I pursue this job opportunity or not? So overall, we make a lot of decisions. So what are the structure of these decisions? So basically, if you look at 3DM, which is data-driven decision making, they've got four major components. Number one, your objectives. What are you trying to do? For example, you want to have a vacation during Christmas. You could go to Hawaii, you could go to Europe, or you could even stay at home or do a staycation. So what's your objectives here? What are the alternatives? So I have three alternatives, three things which I just mentioned. Everything has got a payoff or a benefit, which comes from data and analytics. And lastly, there is an outcome. It could be the best case, which we talk about, best case, normal case, or the worst case, which is all about scenario planning in the world of FP&A. So overall, if you look at the elements of a decision, these are the four key elements of a good data-driven decision making, which you can put it in a decision tree and see how it actually looks. But it all starts with having a good objective. So how do you define a good objective? So let's take a simple case study. So I have two hypotheses here. It's for an oil company, and I want to know which of these two hypotheses is a valuable data analytics model. The team number one says, hey, let's do the prediction on the WTI crude oil prices, and we believe the crude oil prices are a function of these three parameters, explanatory variables, which you see on the right side. Team two comes to you and says, hey, let's work on this prediction on the net working capital, which is a function of these three explanatory variables: inventory, cost of goods sold, and asset failure rate. This is an upstream oil company. Both the teams are coming to you and asking for $1 million. You have $1 million in your pocket. You can't give $500,000 to both of them. You either give them 1 million or nothing. My question to you, which team will you invest in? Team number 1 or team number 2? And why? Type your answers in the chat box. Okay, Larry says 2. Marcio says it's 1. So I will go with one more answer. Both the teams. Why choose? So you have, because you have, see, why choose is basically you have limited money to give. You can't give, you have 1 million and both the teams are asking for 1 million. Of course, both these hypotheses are important for an oil company, but you have to choose one. Which one will you choose? I got 2 answers. Okay, so we got 2 and 1. So if you look at, so this is actually one of the real projects which I work for an oil company. And when I joined this team, there was an existing team which was working on hypothesis 1. And my feedback to them is there is very little value which you get by working on hypothesis 1. The reason being, the crude oil prices are pretty much commoditized. You can get it from the market. You can get it from oil companies. You can get it from the banks. You can get it from analyst companies. You can get it from consulting companies and so on. So there is very little value which you can, or very little differentiation which you are adding. Next, number 2, the factors which are there are something beyond your influence and control. Like even if you say gold prices are a significant component in your crude oil prices, so what? Are you in the gold industry? Nothing. You can't do anything about it. So basically, the point number 1 is you can buy it. The factors are beyond your influence and control, so on and so forth. The team was not just working on these 3 variables. They had 200 variables to predict the price of the crude oil. And most of the time, they used to get it wrong. So my take was that let's focus on step 2 or hypothesis 2, where you can do something about net working capital. You can improve that working and net working capital by managing your cost, by improving your asset reliability and so on. These are the factors which you can do something about it, rather than just saying that the crude oil price is dependent on the gold prices and so on and so forth. So my philosophy was that go with our option number 2. But you know, when you go and tell a current team that don't work on your project, work on something else, how they were really upset with me. And finally, when the oil price tanked in 2016, the team that got laid off first was the team which was working on hypothesis 1. So basically, if you look at hypothesis 2, what are the characteristics? Pick those objectives, which pick those use cases or hypotheses which are clearly tied to business objective. Number 2, which are under your influence and control. And lastly, which lends itself to optimization. Over a period of time, you can continuously improve. So again, when it comes to optimization, I'll tell you a story. I work for a super major oil company, and in that project, every decision they used to make in supply chain was about reducing the cost of cutting the purchase order. And their cost of cutting the purchase order was approximately $375. So after a couple of years, I went to a different oil company, and accidentally in the first meeting, I asked this team, what's the cost of cutting the purchase orders? Because I was there in this other company for almost 2 years, but that KPI was in my head. So a few members were thinking, what is this guy talking about? Is there a metric called as cost of cutting the purchase orders? But a few people said, oh, that's a great question, but we don't have that number. But at the end, the VP of supply chain said, I think we should find out what's the cost of cutting the purchase orders. So in about 1 month, they got that number, which was 650. Their competitor was about 375. They were at 650. So over a period of time, they started improving it, optimizing that number. And in 2020, I met one of those people. They said they brought it down to 450. So this gives you an opportunity over a period of time where if you have things under your influence and control, you can optimize it. You can optimize it over a period of time and get better and better. It doesn't have to be always about business performance. It could be even on your health. For example, if you believe in the concept of measurement and performance, and if you think that, and if you see that your cholesterol levels are a little bit high, you can say that over a period of time, I'm going to reduce it, I'm going to measure it continuously, and I'm going to bring my cholesterol levels to normal. Overall, the point of data analytics is making better decisions so that to measure and you improve over a period of time. So they said anything that can't be measured is very difficult to manage as well. The second thing is about insights. So broadly, we can talk about insights as that unknown elements such as relationship, categories, patterns, inferences, outliers, so on and so forth, which will help you make a better decision. So these insights can be classified into can come from two major sources. One is through science or your common sense. Next, number two, through data analytics. So if you look at science, for example, when during the time of hurricane warnings, the scientific knowledge says that, or common sense says that people buy essential items, which is milk, water, eggs, and these days you can also add toilet papers on it. But Walmart did a study and they said that during hurricane warnings, people are also buying strawberry Pop-Tarts. Oh my gosh, why are people buying strawberry Pop-Tarts during hurricane warning? Whatever the reason is, the data says that people are buying it. So now Walmart and other grocery chains, what they do is during hurricane warnings, they don't just stock milk, water, and eggs. They're also stocking the desserts. So overall, if you look at the way insights are derived, you can't just say data is important, or you just can't say your science or your field experience is important. We need a combination of both to make it happen. So I even wrote a blog in Forbes, which says that to build reliable ML models, you need your scientific knowledge and data, science and data to both come together to make it happen. And once you have those insights, these can be classified as performance insights, which is all about, I want to know what is happening. Like, for example, top 5 products sold, top 5 customers, so on and so forth. And these performance insights gives you the foundation for actionable insights. So I was in a retail company consulting, and so we classify every SKU in the retail in the store. They had approximately 20,000 SKUs into class A, B, C, and D. Class A are fast-moving items, and class D are basically catching dust. So we said we found 15 SKUs for the last 12 weeks. They were class D. And we sent that note to the territory manager. We have some territory managers saying that we have something to show. Almost everybody turned up for the meeting, and when we presented the list of 15 SKUs, they looked at the SKUs and they said, oh, this is amazing insights. We never had this information. Thank you very much for doing this work. So I said, okay, good, thanks very much. But what next? What are we going to do with this? There was a pin drop silence in the room. So I said, I'm not a territory manager, but my common sense tells me that we need to stop keeping class D items in the shelf. As soon as I said that, they said, hold on, you can't do this. Why? Because we all signed an MSA with those vendors. If you terminate those contracts, we have to pay a penalty and all those things. So the point is, we had some great insights, which is performance insights, which people didn't know before. We gave those insights, but to convert it into something actionable, it was very difficult. So what are the characteristics of actionable insights? Basically 3 things. One is it involves a decision. Number 2, it involves consumption of business resources. In that example, if you are decided to terminate the MSA, you need to pay the penalty. That could be the business resources. For example, if you say that, okay, your cholesterol levels are more and you want to do an exercise, you want to regularly go to the exercise, you take the gym membership and you pay your money. So there's one more business resources. And lastly, actionable insights always involve a change. In fact, I tell my clients that analytics is not just about, it's not about technology, it's not about data. It's practically about change management. It's about people. So when we talk about actionable insights, it's all about change management. And the last one is getting the data to derive those insights. I call this as a data flywheel, which is basically you start with good quality data. Then for there, you have good analytics, because good quality data is highly correlated with good insights. Then with good insights, you can make good decisions, and good decisions will to better performance. And again, the cycle continues. So more data practically means you get improved business results. So key characteristics of data from an analytics perspective. So if you look data purely from operations and compliance perspective, it's always a record of a historical event. whatever the data you are talking about, it's about a lag, it's about historical event. Its value is dependent on the data analytics lifecycle. So in the initial stages of the data lifecycle, you might have captured it in your phone and you just upload it in SharePoint. Okay, I just have it, but unless I derive those insights, that image might not have value. So the value is dependent on when you capture it in your data lifecycle. And the value is data is deterministic and it's reusable by multiple stakeholders. For example, you take a purchase order and the purchase order can be looked by supply chain from a service perspective and from finance, probably from a cost perspective. So different stakeholders look at the same data from a different perspective. So what, Prashant? So that means when you look at the data from a historical perspective, there is always a lag. People often use the word real-time analytics. So in my view, that's not a right word. The better word would be near real-time analytics. That's my view, because data always has a lag. The value is more in the later stages of the data lifecycle. Just capturing data doesn't mean anything or doesn't mean much. But on the other hand, if you say that, hey, guys, I've captured the data of sales of almost 200 stores, and I say that this 200 sales of this 200 stores is dependent on the how we experience the store manager as, the number of SKUs kept in the store, the location where the store is based, and so on and so forth. And here is a predictive analytics model where we can predict the sales for the 201st store, which we are opening soon. Then that's where its value comes. The more in the later stages in the data lifecycle, the more value you are going to get. And lastly, the insight is very much contextual. Data is pretty much static. If you look at an item number, the finance sees the item number as the same as what the supply chain might see. Whereas if you look at the cost, when you look at the price, for example, the finance might see it more from a risk perspective or cash flow perspective, whereas the marketing might see just from a profit perspective. So the insight that has been derived from the data is pretty much contextual, depending on who is actually seeing it. So a couple of articles related to this, which you can read it later, which is about my philosophy of real-time analytics, which the better word is near real-time in my view. And then I also wrote an article for CFO University, which is why is data missing in the balance sheet, and what's the reason, and what can happen in the next few years. So if you're interested, you can read it later. So again, when it comes to data, give me some examples of business data which you constantly work with. Type your answers in the chat box. So when somebody says business data, give me an example. Typical idea, production. Okay, good, Marsha. Production data, very good. Anything else? Sales, very good, Kamran. Production, sales. I'll go with one last thing. Performance measures, Susan, good. I'll go with one last thing. Cost to serve, cost. Okay, Kamran, good. Sales, cost, profitability, everything. But if you look at all the answers which people have given, there is one key characteristics which they are talking about, which I call it as first party data. Oh my gosh, what is this new term, Prashant? First party data. Broadly, you can look at the data in a company into four major types. Zero party data, first party, which is all the examples which people just mentioned, second party, and third party. And you can categorize them based on business impact and the volume of data. What is zero party data? It's all the data about your prospects and your potential partnership. Like, for example, you want to get a membership of a club in, say, in Calgary, and you ask in Facebook to that club, hey, is the membership open? Okay, so that club will be looking at your data and they say, this is the data about a potential prospect. He has shown some interest, he might be the prospect. So it could also be the data in the procurement work. So you want to know who is able to better do my data analytics project. So you put this RFX out in the market, and who else? IBM, Deloitte, a lot of companies might respond to this. So these are all the information which you are gathering, but it doesn't mean that just because you're collecting information, you're doing business with those companies. This is all the zero party data, which is all the data which you have about your prospects, about your partners, potential partners rather, so on and so forth. The second one is the first party data. This is the data which has high business impact, but it is under your influence and control. You manage it. The next one is the second party data. This is the data about your partners. For example, you are an insurance company, and most of the insurance products are not sold directly by the company. It's often sold by their agents. These agents are not the employees of those companies, but they are partners of those companies. So they sell the insurance product to you, but they have your data. And this data, like for example, if you take AIG wants your data, often there's some data about you with them, but there's a lot of data about you with their partners or their agents. So this data is called as the second party data. The same thing would happen in oil and gas and construction industry. We have what is known as engineering EPC companies, engineering procurement and construction companies. So you have a project to do, and you give the contract to this company. They build a bridge, and all the drawings pertaining to the bridge are with this contracting company, EPC company. So this data, which is your project, but the data is managed by the second party company, is by your partner, is called as the second party data. The third one is the third party data, which is all the data about which is the data which you can buy. For example, if you say your hypothesis that sales is dependent on the weather, oh my gosh, I don't have the weather data. Where do I get it? You can get it from third party data sources and integrate it to your existing data. So of course, each one of this data has got pros and cons. But why did I put this picture? Often when we talk about data, we are just looking at the first party data. But there is other data sources which you can leverage as well, which many companies are not doing it. For example, we are talking about sales, and many companies don't even have the credit information, Nielsen data, so on and so forth. They are making decisions just on the data which they are captured. So what I advise my clients is don't restrict yourself just to first party data. Look at zero party data, second party, third party, and so on and so forth. Of course, all of them have got pros and cons. So what are the pros and cons of these types of data? Zero party data, it's contextual because somebody wants to know, I want to become a member of your club, but it's very hard to measure whether this person would really become a member or is just asking some casual questions. First party data, you have complete ownership. It is also impacting your business performance, often used in financial reporting, but it is limited in scope, and you need to maintain good quality data on the first party data set. Second party data, you have low data management cost because somebody else is managing it. But the flip side is if you have to get the data from that company to your company, you spend a lot of time or money in integrating the data. The IT costs are very high. And the last one is third party data, which is easily available because they are selling it to everybody. They are not made it for you. You can get the weather data. Your competitor can also get the weather data. So you can get it easily, but there is very little competitive advantage because even your competitors will get it. So overall, don't restrict yourself with just first party data. There are other data sources as well, which you can leverage and get better business results. So this is overall the summary, which is last mile of analytics, which is all about decisions, should be also a factor in looking at your data analytics project. We looked at the key elements of a decision, which are the four things: objective, alternatives, payoffs, and outcomes. And insights could be performance insight, which is just to know, but what we need is basically actionable insight. That's where the real value is. And when we talk about actionable insights, three things: decisions, resources, and change. And when we have to look not just with first party data, we have to look at the data flywheel, which is a combination of four major types of data: zero party, first, second, and third party. So that's it from me. I worked in GE for a very long time back. And of all the 80 different companies I have consulted and worked, GE was easily the best place I have worked. But I just put one of the great quotes from Jack Welch, which is, you can have great insights, but the real thing is converting those insights into action. That's what the real advantage is for the companies. So I'm in LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there, so you can connect me there. Or if you are not in LinkedIn, this is my email ID. So I'll stop sharing, and I'm open for any questions or feedback.
So thank you to our presenter, Prashant Suthakal. I mean, there's a very interesting presentation. Thank you for taking the time to do it. It's much appreciated. I think so many people on this webinar are familiar. So, but for those who aren't a member of our PACE community, please join the conversation. We have a website with a discussion forum. We have a page on LinkedIn, and join our LinkedIn group. We have a great series of ebooks that we're putting out, interest groups on our website, and so many other resources. So, we'd love you all to be part of our community, to contribute, to learn. And as I think as this discussion and the presentation show, there's a lot more that we can and should be doing. So again, thank you everyone for being here. This is our website, profitability-analytics.org. If you want to email us, our email address is info@profitability-analytics, there should be a dash there, .org. And we have, again, we're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube, and a whole other bunch of other platforms. So again, please engage with us going forward. And again, thank you very much, Prashant, for your time today.
Okay, see you, Ref. Thanks everybody for coming.